Hello, and thank you for joining me for another installment of There You Go with Bryan. Farrah Fawcett was born February 2nd, 1947 in Corpus Christi, Texas, and was the younger of two daughters. Her mother, Pauline Alice Fawcett, was a homemaker, and her father, James William Fawcett, was an oil-field contractor. By all accounts, Farrah came from a very happy, well-adjusted home. Her days were spent with family and friends living an all-American life. She once recounted stories of growing up in Texas in the 1950s. She said she would walk to school barefoot and regularly encounter scorpions in her path and just step over them. Perhaps this was where she developed a strong, fearless personality that would serve her well later in life. Starting college at the University of Texas in Austin, Farrah was immediately popular and known for her sunny good looks and sweet personality. People just liked her. While attending UT, Farrah started to get modeling jobs and also started to develop an interest in drama. Now, technically, Farrah was an art major and was very good at it. Her specialty was sculpture. Her instructor said she had a special gift for the art form. In her final year of college, a Hollywood agent just happened to see her picture in an Austin newspaper and persuaded her to come to Hollywood upon graduation. When Fawcett arrived in Hollywood at age 21 in 1968, Screen Gems signed her to a $350 a week contract. She began to appear in commercials for such products as Ultra Bright Toothpaste, Noxzema Skin Cream, Max Factor Cosmetics, Mercury Cougar Automobiles, and Beauty Rest Mattresses, just to name a few. Her earliest acting appearances were guest spots on The Flying Nun in 1969 and I Dream of Jeannie in 1970. In that same year, Farrah was introduced to an established actor named Lee Majors. He had seen Farrah's picture in his agent's office and asked for her number. Lee phoned her, and after much coaxing, she agreed to have coffee with him. A whirlwind romance ensued. After being a couple for several years, they tied the knot in 1973, just about the same time that Farrah's career started to take off. In 1976, a company named Pro Arts Inc. that specialized in posters of celebrities and models was looking for a pretty girl to put on a poster. Upon meeting Farrah, they asked her if she would be interested. She agreed. A photo shoot was then arranged with photographer Bruce McBroom, who was hired by the poster company. It was a low-budget affair. According to friend Nels Van Patten, Fawcett styled her own hair and did her own makeup without the aid of a mirror. Her blonde highlights were further heightened by a squeeze of lemon juice. Fawcett selected her favorite picture from 40 rolls of film. The resulting image of Fawcett in a one-piece red bathing suit turned out to be the best-selling poster ever. While her poster sales skyrocketed, Fawcett earned a supporting role in Michael Anderson's science fiction film Logan's Run in 1976 with Michael York. Meanwhile, Farrah and her husband, television star Lee Majors, were frequent tennis partners with a hot producer named Aaron Spelling. Spelling was working on a movie of the week about 3 police women. It was called Charlie's Angels. After meeting Farrah, Spelling thought she might be a good fit to play policewoman Jill Monroe. The movie of the week, which aired on March 21, 1976 on ABC television, starred Fawcett, then billed as Farrah Fawcett Majors, Kate Jackson, and Jacqueline Smith, as private investigators for Townsend Associates, a detective agency run by a reclusive multimillionaire whom the women had never met. The made-for-TV movie was so successful that it was picked up as a series. The Charlie's Angels series formally debuted on September 22, 1976. Each of the 3 actresses was instantly propelled to stardom, but Fawcett dominated popularity polls. She subsequently won a People's Choice Award for Favorite Performer in a New TV Program. In a 1977 interview with TV Guide, she said, "When the show was number 3, I thought it was our acting. When we got to be number 1, I decided it could only be because none of us wore a bra." Fawcett's appearance in the television show boosted sales of her poster, and after a short time, she earned far more in royalties from the poster sales than from her salary for appearing in Charlie's Angels. Her hairstyle also went on to become an international trend, with women sporting a Farrah do, a Farrah flip, or simply Farrah hair. Iterations of her hair influenced American women's hairstyles well into the 1980s. Charlie's Angels became a blockbuster smash. The show was tops in the ratings. It seemed like the entire world was Angels crazy. Charlie's Angels lunchboxes and t-shirts were everywhere. ABC was getting rich off the show, and while Farrah was doing well, she asked for a share of the merchandise sales and was turned down. Breaking with Hollywood tradition, she left the show after just 1 year. The blowback was fierce. Many found her ungrateful and accused her of having an inflated ego. But that just wasn't true. Remember that little girl who used to walk to school stepping over scorpions? Well, that's just what Farrah did. She was told she would never work again. She would be blackballed in Hollywood. Nevertheless, she stepped away from a majorly successful show and struck out to prove she was more than just a beautiful blonde with a dazzling smile. Unfortunately, the pressures of work and stardom quickly started to drive a wedge in between Farrah and her husband, Lee Majors. He was quoted once as saying at the top of their careers, they hardly ever saw each other. Eventually, they separated in 1979 and were officially divorced in 1982. Around that same time, Farrah started seeing well-established and successful movie star Ryan O'Neal. Their relationship was intense and volatile, to say the least. In 1983, Fawcett won critical acclaim for her role in the off-Broadway stage production of the controversial play Extremities. Replacing Susan Sarandon, she played the role of an attempted rape victim who turns the tables on her attacker. She described the role as the most grueling, the most intense, the most physically demanding, and emotionally exhausting of her career. The following year, her role as battered wife Francine Hughes in the fact-based television movie The Burning Bed, 1984, earned her the first of her 4 Emmy Award nominations. The project was the first television movie to provide a nationwide 800 number that offered help for those in abusive situations. It was the highest-rated television movie of the season. It was at this point in 1985, when Farrah was getting much-deserved respect as an actress, that she and Ryan had a son. His name was Redmond, and he would prove to be the only child Farrah would have. In 1986, Farrah appeared in a movie version of Extremities, which performed well financially. For her performance, she received a Golden Globe nomination for Best Performance by an Actress in a Motion Picture Drama. She appeared in Between Two Women with Colleen Dewhurst and took several more dramatic roles as either infamous or renowned women. That same year, Robert Duvall chose Fawcett to play the role of his wife in The Apostle, which was an independent feature film that he was producing. She received an Independent Spirit Award nomination as Best Actress for the film in 2000. In 2000, she worked with director Robert Altman in the feature film Dr. T and the Women as the wife of Richard Gere. Her character has a mental breakdown leading to Fawcett's first fully nude appearance. It was at this point in her life that Farrah, now 53, started to see both her professional and personal life take a downturn. The sex symbol of the 1970s was getting older, and problems in her personal life were starting to take a toll. It was well known that Ryan O'Neal was a regular abuser of drugs and alcohol, but now there were accusations that Ryan was physically abusing Farrah, not to mention being a serial philanderer. In 1997, Farrah came home to find Ryan in bed with a 25-year-old actress. She ended the relationship. But some suspected that Ryan's habits had spilled over into Farrah's life, but confirmation of her drug and alcohol abuse was mostly related to her appearance on the David Letterman show, where she seemed confused and ditzy. As Fawcett began to lose a bit of momentum in her acting career, it didn't seem to bother her as she reconnected with her first love, art. It was in the early 2000s that Farrah realized that she wanted to spend more time drawing, painting, and sculpting instead of spending all of her time in front of a camera. Around 2001, Fawcett befriended artist and designer Christopher Ciccone. When Ciccone saw her work, he was blown away. You have to remember, most people never even knew that Farrah Fawcett was an artist. In 2002, Fawcett collaborated with sculptor Keith Edemeyer. The work was exhibited at the Los Angeles County Museum of Art in a show titled Contemporary Projects No. 7, Keith Edemeyer and Farrah Fawcett 2000. The exhibit was later displayed at the Andy Warhol Museum in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. The sculpture was also presented in a series of photographs and a book by Rosali. It was at this point in Farrah's life, when things were looking up, that she was dealt a devastating blow. Farrah was complaining of abdominal pain, and upon visiting her doctor in 2006, Fawcett was diagnosed with anal cancer. After the initial shock of the diagnosis, Farrah began treatment that included chemotherapy and surgery. 4 months later, on February 2, 2007, her 60th birthday, the Associated Press reported that Fawcett was at that point cancer-free. It was at this point that Farrah, against advice from her friends, reconnected with her old love, Ryan O'Neal. But happiness proved elusive when in May of 2007, Fawcett experienced a reoccurrence and was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer that had metastasized to her liver. A malignant polyp was found where she had been treated for the initial cancer. Doctors contemplated whether to treat Farrah with radiation. Her U.S. doctors told her that she would also require a colostomy bag. Not wanting to proceed with a colostomy for treatment of her stage 4 cancer, she traveled to Germany for treatments described variously in the press as aggressive and alternative. There in Germany, Dr. Ursula Jacobs prescribed a treatment including surgery to remove the anal tumor, a course of perfusion and immobilization for her liver cancer by Drs. Klaus Keeling and Thomas Vogel in Germany, and chemotherapy back in Los Angeles. Although initially the tumors were regressing, their reappearance a few months later necessitated a new course, this time including laser ablation therapy and chemoimmobilization. Farrah's last hope was for the doctors to choke off the blood supply to the tumor and flood the affected area with chemotherapy. The outlook was bleak. The golden girl of the 1970s was in for the fight of her life, and the odds were against her. It was at this point that Farrah started documenting her cancer journey. She initially started recording her meetings with her doctors because she didn't want to miss any of the information, but it didn't take long for her to realize that maybe what she was going through might help others. Maybe her pain and suffering could shed a light on her cancer battle, and in doing so, help her many fans who, just like Farrah, were just trying to stay alive. The 2-hour documentary, Farrah's Story, which was filmed by Fawcett and friend Alana Stewart, aired on NBC on May 15, 2009. At its premiere airing, the documentary was watched by nearly 9 million people, and it was re-aired on the broadcast network's cable stations MSNBC, Bravo, and Oxygen. In the documentary, we see Farrah go from the highs of getting back an all-clear test result to the devastating lows of hearing the news that the cancer had returned with a vengeance, spreading to her liver. In the last weeks of her life, Farrah fought hard and kept a positive attitude, and continued to lean heavily on her Catholic schoolgirl faith, grasping her rosary beads and saying prayers. Pain meds were regularly administered day after day until she slipped into a coma, and finally on June 25, 2009, at 2:28 p.m. California time, Farrah Lene Fawcett at last received her angel wings and quietly passed away at the age of 62 at St. John's Health Center in Santa Monica, California, with Ryan O'Neal and her girlfriend Alana Stewart at her side. A private funeral was held on June 30, 2009 at Westwood Memorial Park in Los Angeles, otherwise known as the City of Angels. Thank you for joining us for another installment of There You Go with Bryan. If you'd like to support this channel, please click the Venmo or Patreon link below. And as always, we always appreciate you tuning in.